I got hurt really badly, and when I asked for medical help, my parents said, "We're not wasting money on that." Some much-needed context before I get to the story. Before this happened, I already had a history of at least 2 concussions. The first one I got in middle school after I fell off a swing set mid-swing, and the second after I hit my head on my garage door like a dumbass. There have been several other instances of head injuries, but not enough to be labeled as full-on concussions. My parents are divorced, and at the time I was living with my dad full-time as my mom had kicked me out of her house freshman year of high school. For several months up to this point, I had been planning to go to Legoland with my father to celebrate my 18th birthday in January 2024, and it was something I was really looking forward to. Now to the story. A little over a year ago, during December 2023, when I was 17 about to turn 18, I was visiting my younger brother, 14 at the time, and my mother for dinner. After dinner, me and my brother had a small scuffle over who got to sit in the front seat, as siblings do. But during the scuffle, my brother had accidentally slammed the car door right onto the side of my head. Now, my brother rock climbs 6 days a week, and I'm pretty scrawny, so he hit my head pretty hard. As I went to sit in the back seat, my head started to really hurt. During the ride, I brought up how the car door had hit my head, and my brother refused to acknowledge he had even hit me, let alone apologize. I got pretty upset by this. When we made it to my mother's house, I asked her why she didn't do anything about it before I got into my car and drove back to my dad's place. By the time I got there, I was bawling my eyes out. I don't even fully remember why. I just remember being in pain and telling my dad how my brother had accidentally hit me with the car door and refused to apologize. Now the details get a little fuzzy, so I don't exactly remember the exact dates of everything. I only vaguely remember going to the doctors and getting diagnosed with a concussion. Since this was December, this was right before finals and my birthday, December 16th. I talked to my school about the concussion, and they were understanding enough to let me freeze my grades and not take any finals, which were all A's and I think 2 B's. They told me to go home and get some rest, no problem. Here's where the bullshit started. Basically, immediately my dad and mom began pressuring me to take the finals so I can raise my B grades, which were in my hardest classes. I tried to explain to them that I shouldn't be doing that because I need to rest, and if I take the exam, while concussed, I might run the risk of doing extremely poorly on them and dropping my grades. But they would not listen. My dad told me that I should go to the ER if I don't feel well enough to take the finals. They kept pushing me to do things while I was trying to rest, despite how much I tried to empathize that I need to be recovering. During this, I basically had to miss my 18th birthday because I was asleep for 17 whole hours. This, along with the fact that it's generally harder to control your emotions after you've had a brain injury, culminated in what I can essentially describe as a mental breakdown. I broke into tears in the middle of the night, unable to control myself as I sobbed in my bed. I texted my dad to let him know that I felt like I did need to go to the ER in the morning. He came into my room and asked me if I was okay, so I told him through tears that my head was really hurting and I didn't know what to do. I told him I probably had to skip the rest of my finals, to which he insisted, again, that I should take them. I responded by saying that I'm in absolutely no condition to take them. He then said that if I'm not feeling better, then we should cancel my birthday trip, which upset me even more because I was really looking forward to it. He left the room, but shortly came back and said he'll just take me to the ER now. I was still sobbing on the way to the hospital and getting admitted. The nurses suggested we do a CT scan to see if there's any possibility for severe brain injury. They did a CT scan, and thankfully nothing came up. They said that it was most likely a concussion and to take it easy and rest. 2 days later, I went back to school to try to do the last of my finals like my parents had requested. This proved to be a massive mistake, as I almost immediately got the worst headache I've ever had in my entire life. I was head down in between my arms at my desk, feeling like my head was going to explode. I don't remember the exact events, but I eventually tried to make my way to the nurse, and on the way there I vomited into a nearby trash can. This really worried me at the time because my concussed brain remembered the fact that throwing up can mean a severe concussion, and I assumed my concussion had somehow gotten worse. So I asked my dad to pick me up from school and asked him to take me to the doctor again. In hindsight, it probably was not necessary, but, reminder, I had a concussion and was not getting any rest. I was barely thinking straight at this point. He said something about asking my sister, 20, to take me, so I texted her asking if she could take me. She angrily responded by saying that I don't have a concussion and to stop being so dramatic. When I asked what she meant, she said that my dad had told her over lunch yesterday that the CT scan didn't come up with anything, so I didn't have a concussion. A quick Google search will show that concussions don't show up on CT scans to begin with, and even if my memory is a bit blurry, I do remember the nurses telling me I had a concussion. So I turned to my dad and asked him what was up with him telling my sister I didn't have a concussion behind my back. He said that, "I think everyone has had enough of this, and we just want this to be over with." as if it was my fault I had the concussion and that I was somehow choosing to prolong it. It had only been like a week, maybe a week and a half at most. My recommended recovery time was 2 weeks, which had probably been extended because, again, my parents were not letting me get the proper rest I needed. We eventually got to where my sister was, and I had to convince her to please take me to the doctor, all while she was lambasting me for not having a concussion. At the same time, I started getting texts from my mom doing the same thing and threatening Tio make me pay for the emergency room visit so I would have Tio go into debt when I just turned 18. Her words. When I got to the doctor, they essentially told me that they don't think the concussion has gotten worse, but me not getting enough rest has worsened some of the symptoms. They also confirmed that yes, I had a concussion, and yes, they don't show on CT scans. So to recap, 2 separate doctors and a medical nurse all confirmed I had a concussion. That is 3 separate medical professionals who all unanimously agreed it was a concussion. I sent a video of my doctor explaining this to my dad, and he said, "You should show that to mom and sister to see what they think." I absolutely lost it. I yelled at him over text that it was his fault that I'm even in this position and that he needs to take responsibility and admit he was wrong. He responded by saying, "You seem a bit upset. Why don't you spend the night at your mother's?" I said there is no way in hell you are going to make me to sleep at the same house as my mother and sister who were accusing me of faking a concussion and my brother who gave me the concussion to begin with. At this point I had left the doctors and was beginning to walk on my own to get some food because nobody in my family wanted to pick me up. I made it to a small Mexican place and ordered some lunch while continuously trying to fight tears. I had multiple of my family members, immediate and extended, messaging me telling me that the concussion was fake and that I needed to return my mother's messages. After I had finished eating, I took an Uber back to school because I didn't know where else to go. I felt as unloved and so unsafe by both my parents. My head was still hurting and I was barely keeping it together. I just wanted to crawl into a hole and die. This is when my uncle, the only sane person, called me. I broke down on call and told him everything that happened. He listened and seemed to understand where I was coming from. He didn't accuse me of faking anything. He just wanted to know if I was safe because my parents started to realize that they didn't know where I was. He suggested I call my mother, and I said I didn't want to because she's just going to yell at me. He said that my mother was truly just worried and wanted to know where I am. I relented, and he hung up so I could call my mom. Almost immediately, my mother was aggressive towards me. We spent the past few hours arguing on the phone. I won't go into everything said, but I'll paraphrase a few notable moments. Primarily that she once again accused me of faking a concussion, when I told her that the doctors had confirmed I had one and that they don't show on CT scans. She said that I must have Googled the symptoms of a concussion and told the doctor. I told her that's insane because I've literally been having the worst headaches of my life and throwing up. If it's not a concussion, then what is it? She said she didn't know, but it couldn't be a concussion because concussions don't last this long. Not true. I was given 2-week period to recover and I hadn't even hit it yet. I said even if it's not a concussion, I'm still in pain and that needs to be taken seriously. She then said that I had been going around telling people that my brother slammed a car door on my head. I told her that's exactly what happened. He slammed a car door on my head. She said that it couldn't possibly be the case because there's no way a car door can give someone a concussion. I told her that 1. I already have had 2 concussion and multiple head injuries before this, which makes it easier for me to have them in the future, and 2. I only started getting headaches and feeling pain after he hit my head. What else could it be? She then complained that I was making her look bad by telling people that my brother slammed a car door on my head. I clarified that I hadn't even mentioned her to anyone before today and that I acknowledged to everyone I told that it was an accident from my brother and I just wanted him to apologize. She then yelled at me about how she's not responsible for my brother's actions and can't make him do anything. But she can yell at me for telling other people why I got a concussion. The argument continued from there. At one point, she tried to claim that she was a good mother and that I had been nothing but a problem child, to which I responded, what kind of mother threatens to put their barely 18-year-old kid in debt because they might have been faking an injury? She made a lot of nasty remarks at me, including claiming that the reason why I had trichotillomania, pulling your hair uncontrollably because of OCD or general anxiety, was because I never wanted to change. She finally said that she would still pick me up and take me home because she's a good parent who loves me. I told her to eat shit and that I'll tell my dad where I was, but I genuinely would rather die than go to her house. She begrudgingly agreed after she realized that it was getting dark and I wasn't budging. While I waited for my dad to pick me up, my uncle called and asked if I was going back home. I told him yes, but I was going back to my dad's house, not my mom's. He asked how the call went and I broke down again and told him everything. He did his best to reassure me until my dad picked me up and we silently drove home. I never got a single apology from anyone. Not my brother for giving me the concussion, not my father, not my sister, and especially not my mother. To this day, over a year later, they still insist I didn't have a concussion because of that fucking CT scan. And when I got an inner ear infection during November 2024, they went right back to accusing me of faking it until they realized, oh wait, it's actually real, and then started pretending like it was real the whole time, and they never accused me of faking it. I didn't go to the ER for it until I literally passed out in front of several people because I was so scared that it would start my family up all over again. I can't even go into a fucking hospital or doctor's office now without being reminded of what happened. And for the shit cherry on this shit Sunday, a week later during Christmas, my siblings didn't get me anything after I spent $200 getting presents for them. I fucking hate my entitled family so goddamn much. I'm so glad I'm in college now. TLDR, brother gave me a concussion by accidentally slamming a car door on my head. Parents refused to let me rest until I had a mental breakdown and had to go to the ER. While I was there, I got a CT scan that showed I didn't have any severe brain injury, just a concussion. My dad took that as to mean I didn't have one, and my entire family basically harassed me for faking a concussion and still refused to believe it's real after multiple doctors confirmed it. Never got an apology from any of them.